Today, Movie Recap Top brings you the chilling and emotional journey of The Quiet, a story that will haunt you long after the credits roll. Dot, a high school girl who is both deaf and mute, feels invisible due to her disability. She spends most of her time alone, drifting through school without friends. Recently, Dot lost her only family, her father, who raised her alone. She now lives with her godmother's family, who took her in. Nina, her godsister, feels uncomfortable with Dot's presence in their house and dislikes her without any clear reason. At school, Dot is an outcast, overlooked or mocked by others, while Nina is part of the popular crowd, enjoying the attention it brings. One day, Nina and her cheerleader friends see Dot in the hallway and cruelly mock her for her disability, laughing at her silence. A school counselor notices this bullying and tries to reach out to Dot, inviting her to join her for lunch to avoid the harassment. However, Dot declines and instead finds solace in the bathroom stall, a place where she feels safe. Here, she can enjoy a moment of peace, away from judgment. This comfort is short-lived, as Nina soon barges into the bathroom, pulling Dot out with frustration and making it clear that it's time to go home. Back at their house, Nina's mother, Olivia, encourages Nina to be kind and help Dot feel welcome, explaining that Dot has been through a lot and needs support. But Nina remains uninterested, seeing Dot as an unwanted addition to her life. In Nina's mind, it wasn't her decision to take Dot in, and she doesn't see why she should make an effort. That evening, when Nina's father, Paul, comes home, he finds Olivia passed out in the living room. Olivia struggles with alcoholism and depression, burdens that weigh heavily on the family, especially with Dot now living with them. After dinner, Paul helps Olivia to bed, her heavy antidepressant regimen leaving her drowsy and unsteady. Once Olivia is settled, Paul returns to the dining table, noticing the thick silence between the girls. Hoping to ease the tension, he suggests that the family learn basic sign language to communicate better with Dot. Before he can say more, Nina rolls her eyes, cuts him off, and abruptly leaves the room. The next day at lunch, Nina and her friends sit at their usual spot, gossiping. Her friend Michelle teases her, poking fun at Nina for being 17 and still a virgin. Michelle insists Nina could have any guy she wants, but Nina brushes off the teasing with a shrug, unwilling to reveal her own reasons. Meanwhile, Dot, wandering alone through the school, stumbles upon an empty music room. Seeing the piano, she feels a familiar pull and sits down to play. She once practiced piano back when she could still hear. Although she can no longer hear the notes, her fingers glide over the keys with practiced grace, creating a melody that fills the room. Connor, one of the popular boys, passes by and stops, mesmerized by Dot's playing. He watches silently, captivated by her skill, until his friend pulls him away. Later, Dot runs into Nina in the school bathroom. Dot tries to avoid her, but Nina insists on applying lipstick on her. For a moment, Dot thinks Nina might be trying to connect, but when she looks in the mirror, she realizes Nina has smeared the lipstick on purpose, making her look ridiculous. Any hope of bonding fades as Dot stares at her distorted reflection. That night, Dot lies awake, thinking of her father. The familiar ache of loneliness washes over her, and she steps outside for fresh air. Wandering the hallway, she notices Nina's bedroom door ajar. Curious, she peeks inside and is horrified to see Nina and Paul in bed together. Stunned, she retreats to her room, her heart racing with confusion and fear. The next evening at dinner, Nina casually asks her parents for permission to stay overnight at her friend Michelle's house. Paul firmly refuses, but Olivia, trying to support Nina, encourages her to go. As Paul holds his ground, Nina subtly runs her foot up his leg under the table, attempting to manipulate him into agreeing. Paul remains silent, which Nina interprets as permission, and she immediately calls Michelle to make plans. Later, Paul confronts Olivia, frustrated with how she undermines his decisions. Their exchange grows tense before he storms off. Meanwhile, Dot quietly hands Olivia a note asking if she can go to the movies. Paul offers to drive her, and though hesitant, Dot agrees, sensing an unease she can't fully explain. At the theater, Dot finds herself sitting alone while Nina and her friends sit together in the middle row. Connor notices Dot by herself and considers approaching her, but his friends dissuade him. Nina briefly glances at Dot, and for a moment, a flicker of sympathy crosses her face. However, she quickly masks it, brushing off the feeling. Curious about Dot's experience, Nina covers her ears experimentally, trying to imagine what it's like to be deaf. Embarrassed when she realizes Dot is watching her, Nina stops abruptly. That night, Dot lies awake, troubled by what she saw in Nina's room and the tension in the household. Her thoughts are interrupted when she hears footsteps. Pretending to be asleep, she senses Paul entering her room. He gently strokes her hair, whispering to himself, calling himself sick. It becomes clear that Paul understands the darkness of his actions with Nina, but feels powerless to change. Paul had hoped that taking Dot into the family might keep him away from Nina, but her presence hasn't eased his compulsions. Dot lies still, her mind racing. The next day, Dot finds herself alone at home and plays the piano to fill the silence. She becomes so absorbed in the music that she doesn't notice Nina returning home early, watching her quietly from the doorway. Suddenly, a piano wire snaps, startling Dot, who mutters a rare curse under her breath. Nina freezes in shock, realizing Dot might have been able to hear all along. Rather than confront her, Nina pretends she has just arrived home and doesn't call out the possible deception. The following day at lunch, Nina unexpectedly sits with Dot. Confused, Dot listens as Nina begins sharing disturbing details about her private moments with Paul, clearly trying to provoke a reaction. Dot remains silent, refusing to engage. Before leaving, Nina hints darkly that she plans to use Michelle's gun to kill Paul. That evening, Dot stays calm outwardly, but is deeply unsettled by Nina's threat. Needing to distract herself, she goes to the school music room to play the piano. While playing, she notices Connor watching her from the doorway. Nervous, she tries to leave, but he stops her and invites her to collaborate on a lab report. Later, as the family sits down for dinner, there's a knock at the door. Connor appears, asking if Dot can join him at the library for their lab work. Dot hesitates but agrees. Just then, Michelle arrives and hands a small bag to Nina. Dot's heart sinks, recalling Nina's mention of Michelle's gun. At the library, Connor and Dot discuss the lab report, but Connor quickly shifts to sharing his personal thoughts, believing Dot cannot hear him. He opens up about his feelings and fantasies, unaware she understands every word. Dot listens silently, uncertain how to respond. Suddenly, an ambulance speeds toward Dot's house. Panicked, she assumes the worst and rushes home. To her relief, she finds everyone safe. Quietly heading to Nina's room, she overhears Paul's voice and Nina's distressed tone. Acting quickly, Dot breaks a nearby statue, the loud noise startling Paul and prompting him to leave Nina's room. Nina, left alone and overwhelmed, breaks down in tears. Dot enters the room and lies beside her, offering silent comfort as Nina cries herself to sleep. In the following days, Nina's behavior becomes increasingly erratic. She alternates between hostility and vulnerability, particularly around Dot. Dot remains quietly observant, deeply worried about Nina's intentions toward Paul. One evening, Nina invites Dot to join her at a party. Reluctantly, Dot agrees, sensing Nina has ulterior motives. At the party, Nina drinks heavily and tries to embarrass Dot in front of everyone. However, Dot stays calm, refusing to react. Frustrated, Nina storms off, leaving Dot alone. While wandering through the party, Dot notices Nina and Paul arguing in a nearby room. She stays hidden, but hears enough to realize their relationship is far more toxic and dangerous than she'd imagined. Nina eventually storms out, visibly shaken. That night, back at home, Dot finds Nina sitting in the living room, clutching Michelle's gun. Without speaking, Dot sits down beside her. After a long silence, Nina begins to sob, confessing how trapped and scared she feels. Dot gently takes the gun from her and hides it away. The next day, Dot prepares to leave for school when she sees Nina and Paul arguing outside the house. Before Dot can intervene, Nina lashes out, pushing Paul away and yelling for him to leave her alone. Paul storms off, but not before glaring at both girls with a threatening look. At school, Dot struggles to concentrate, her mind racing with worry for Nina. Connor, noticing her distraction, tries to cheer her up by suggesting they play a duet in the music room. For the first time, Dot agrees, finding solace in the music. Later that evening, Nina comes into Dot's room and sits on the edge of her bed. She hesitates, then confesses that she knows Dot can hear. Surprised but calm, Dot nods. Nina smiles faintly, relieved, and says, "You've been the only one who's truly listened." From that moment, a fragile but genuine bond begins to form between the two. They both know the road ahead won't be easy, but they've found something rare: understanding. As the draws to a close, Nina finally confronts the destructive cycle she's trapped in. With Dot's quiet yet unwavering support, she takes the first step toward breaking free from Paul's toxic grip. Meanwhile, Dot, no longer just a silent observer, proves that sometimes listening is the most powerful thing you can do for someone in pain. But the question remains: can Nina truly escape her past and build a better future? And how will this unlikely friendship between two broken souls shape their lives moving forward? This film leaves us pondering the resilience of the human spirit and the power of connection in even the darkest times. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more amazing stories. See you in the next video.